So Monty couldn't be here today, but he sent over just a copy of the TNT notice. It's just like last year's, only the years are going to change, basically. He also sent over some correspondence for us. And he would like us to just mention this to you and also send it out when we send our correspondence, so you know what's going on with your outsourcers and Monty too, but he's really responsible for the forms. So first part, yeah, they're in the process. But as you know, I think the last 2 years, you have to print your levies on the back of your TNTs. And I think last year was the first year that we actually formally printed them on the TNTs. I think the year before we did something online or something. But anyway, of course, we're going to do that this year. So you need to get your levies to, if you're outsourcing with Forum or you're printing in-house, you need to get your levies to Monty by October 8th. And these go to him, and then he disperses them to Forum and to us. If you're outsourcing with Prima Data, it is also October 8th, but you send it directly to Tracy. And like I said, at the bottom here are their emails and such. And we will either print it for them, we did today, and we will also send it on with our correspondence, so you have that. Any questions on that? Well, the first thing we'll talk about is some notifications that you have been getting about a lawsuit that you are to provide information to a company. Mike, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I'm guessing that's the lawsuit, the Tyler versus Hennepin. And I think what they're asking, I think most of you probably already sent some information to them on which parcels basically would have had a forfeiture on them. What they're looking for after an investigation that we did is they're looking for addresses and ways of contacting these people that had were in the forfeiture. The problem is that the current owner potentially is not, or probably is not, that address is not of the owner that was the owner during the forfeiture. So we were just wondering, having a discussion, we're trying to come up with a way that we can help with the data. And
because they ask for access.
They ask for access to your system, which I don't think most people really want to do, have an outside person have access to the tax system. So Gwen's had some ideas about what we can do to get it, but I guess the first thing is, well, did everybody receive that letter or emails? Has anybody, what have people done about it so far? Have they?
Both counties, our reporter gave them access to our Fiddler researching documents. In Polk, so what our reporter did was gave them access to Fiddler where they go and research the documents. We chose to do it free of charge. Our reasoning was if we didn't give that to them free of charge, they would ask us for it and we would need to put the staff time in to try to find it. So that's what we did. We gave them usernames and passwords and she said, set them up for a certain period of time.
Well, yeah, that makes sense because the reporter probably would have that information still versus our tax system. Was there a clause when you say, do they pay the counties anything, for research or anything to get that information? I didn't see in the lawsuit one way or the other in the letter from Kroll.
No.
Nothing.
I think they were asking for it to be free of charge. I don't know if everybody that gave access did that. But that's a system that other subscribers paid for, but we just chose.
And we're looking at time too, we're looking at new quarter.
Yeah.
Only have a fee that charge. They want several.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Look at my ordinance. We have.
Hearing that, well, I put new batteries in, they're asking for multiple, access points and their counties are allowing one user to access through the recorder's office.
As a newly appointed recorder, we're doing the same thing, one access and allowing them to have a limited amount of time.
I guess, is there anybody that that's not using the recorder's office, I guess? One thing we were wondering about, we're gonna let you jump in here too, is we were wondering if there'd be a way, because we do have the old owner information going back. Obviously the recorder, I think, would probably have better data than what we have on that. But really,
Well, because you have to,
In the recorder's office, it's a document that's recorded. That's the only time you have updated information. Then we update our mailing records in the tax system based off of what the post office tells us. So the tax system is probably gonna have a better, more up-to-date activity. And so it really wouldn't cost anything extra either to have inquiry access, just like we give our public for the tax system, would it?
Well, how are you gonna let them in?
right, that's the thing, how would they get in? I mean, would they have to come to the counter to get access to that?
I don't know, how is it with the open data source on a lot of our GIS applications? You know, there's stuff getting tossed out there, that's just current year data that's stored out there?
Yeah, that's just gonna be the same stuff that's on tax web, which that was one of our thoughts, is that public facing tax web, but that wouldn't have the owner information from when that forfeiture took place.
But the very last current information is not gonna be in reporters' recorded records. So the last thing that's probably recorded is the forfeiture document, the auditor's certificate of forfeiture. That's gonna be the last address that they find in the recorder's software.
Unless they own other property in the county. Somehow, some way, alternate owner. Contractor.
Anything like that, unless they would, then you would have a more current address, right? But if that was the last thing that happened,
Why would they, or you're saying they'd have to be researching other properties, so that would be one aspect.
I would think what they do is, well, this is what I do. I would go to that parcel and get the owner number, taxpayer number, and then I would go search other parcels with that number and alternates and the owners and see if I can get that number somewhere else. And if I can, in the current 23-ish, that would probably be a current address.
And that's the tax system, not the recorder's records.
Yes.
Once you tell me your idea too, what we.
Well, the only idea I had was we have parcel data and the taxpayer numbers associated with that parcel back years and years and years and years. And we could just dump that and,
Like to an Excel or
Yeah.
something like that, to make it
Yeah.
easier to search for.
and dump it like, what was the years, like 2012 to 23?
2016, I think it was, to 2023.
2016 to 2023.
And I
Well,
think,
you probably want to drag in the 24 too, because that would have the most current address. But, at any rate, to just dump them out and then it's up to them to do the search through there. I mean, that's what I do, is I start with the parcel and get the number and then try and find that number in a more recent year. Attached to some other property.
They have to do the legwork. You can't hold their hand all the way through
Yeah.
this. But I'm speaking from the one and only connection.
So, I mean, I guess our bottom line is, we are not in favor of allowing people into the CPT system like that. It would have to be a user, there'd have to be VPN access, I mean, you know.
that's the biggest piece, is that they'd have to have VPN access to get in there, and that gets a little tricky to do that for all the counties, but we've been kind of brainstorming, come up with ways that we can help with, getting that information. That's kind of one that, I'm not gonna take credit when came up with that one, but, I mean, is that something that would be helpful to be able to get to them, or, does everybody have kind of other methods of getting it, or?
Giving them the recorder is fine with us. Want to go that route?
Yeah, and the one thing we were discussing last night is, if this person kind of disappears from the county completely, I don't know how, if they have a way of comparing it to other counties, if they went to a different county or what, but, our thought was that if there'd be a way to dump that data, they could search that. But that'd be each county individually or separately.
Is that something then that you guys charge them for?
Well, that's what
That's a question.
That's a question, yeah.
Because I know with Norman County, we don't use Fiddler or whatever, we have DocuPro. So DocuPro is not a web-based one, so it is internal as well. So I emailed back, and I know Red Lake County emailed back and said, we'll get you the information, you'll have to tell us what you want, but we can't give you access into our stuff. And they just said, thanks for the information, we'll get back to you. So we're in limbo.
I think that you did the initial one to get them the parcels that were under forfeiture.
And the question here is, if we did this dump, who would be paying for it? Correct? Like, would we have billed them or what would we do?
Well, that was some of the question. I don't know if the county, if that's something that, the county could get reimbursed from the Kroll. Is that who the administrator is on it, I think? I think we're batting that around too. We don't know. Because obviously it would take some time, but, it would be kind of cookie cutter, I would think, that don't, but yeah.
If you have a charger, that's great. So, like, said, we're not gonna hold their hand. They've made our life miserable already.
Yeah.
So I am not gonna be happy and rah, 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 help you out. Make them do the research. I may be better. I'm real.
Oh, I think that's what, the thought was, if we dump that to Excel, then it would just, go to them and they do the legwork on it, basically.
But it would be getting the information.
Right.
Such as we have.
I was at a full recorder fiddler meeting yesterday, and the general consensus there of the groups that were together were to be using the recorder records. Several reasons. It'll show the deceased, and they can stop looking for that individual because they'll have those evidence. They also are going to be looking for mortgages or anything that was attached to that property at the time of forfeiture, which should be in the recorded records also. So the biggest concern we had when they were discussing was likely new addresses. So the deed was several years old, the new addresses they'll need On my side, being auditor recorder, I think we could find that in our records without giving them access. So that's what I was gonna propose to answer in the email.
Okay, well, I guess that's what we can do for you. So I guess you take it from there, and if anyone is interested in something like that, just contact.
Contact us, yeah. I think that's-
That's what they copied. Then I do have our.
So outside of the back history with all this, going forward in the tax law, we need to gather up the information for estimated market value and as well as what the tax due. So that tax forfeited report is anybody interested and is there room to add the estimated market value onto that report? So it's readily accessible as you're going through later.
Would that just be would it be the taxable market value or?
Yes, in that same area, estimated.
Or estimated? Or both? I mean, sure.
It's estimated market value, not the tax. I mean, to tack that on there because our first option has to be based off of our
Yeah.
minimum sale prices. That,
So if one of our tax people will make a note of that, yeah, we'll look into that.
see
Sure.
if there's still room in the columns.
We'll find it.
Oh, yeah, I can see, because it goes first by, if you can do estimated market value, and then it goes, does it drop to like costs, and if it doesn't sell it,
The
then
tax, to the amount of tax at the time of forfeiture.
plus any county costs and stuff.
Yes. And that, so you, at least in that one report, you have the chunk of what you need in one location versus going in parcel by parcel.
I think we had one chat that was from Nobles County saying they are in Land Shark and told them that they could pay a fee to get the information. Which would be similar to if they wanted to get information from us and we could provide that and they could pay a fee.
Anything else on that?
Yeah. We're just kind of looking for thoughts, I mean, we kind of brainstormed down a little bit, but.
All right, so, we got the new tax laws and, I know there was a lot of, about forfeitures, but that didn't really affect our CPT system, except what Janelle asked for, something minor like that. But as far as changing it and enhancing it, it didn't. The only other, thing was the truth in taxation, and the tax statement talked initially, well, did talk about fiscal disparities, and initially I didn't know sure if that would affect anyone here. But then when I saw, the TNT notice that was special for the Iron Range, I realized that we are good. We don't have anything to do. Yay, finally. Okay, so, I'll move on. Items to address prior to next year's valuation and tax statements. So the bottom line about TNTs is we're ready to go, pretty much. You're working with your outsourcers, Sue, and all of that, but the main programs, there's a couple maybe enhancements, small ones we want to make before you totally get started, but they're minor. And so we basically be ready to go on TNTs. Okay, so one thing that was asked of us, and this came from an assessor, it came through the evaluation notices, but what they're not liking is that when there's what's a 106 or a 108 code, which is our ag entity, which does get the first tier carryover from their ag records, if there's anything left. they don't like the fact that it says non-homestead. Because, well, the reasoning was farmers do not want to see non-homestead. That was their reasoning, which I don't disagree with, but, talking to a couple assessors, and now it will go on your T and Ts, so we're bringing it to you, so you know. We're thinking, why do we have to say anything? Because, down below, and I'll address this in a minute. You only have to say if it's homestead, non-homestead, fractional, whatever. If it's qualifies for that, as in the residentials and the ag, house and garages and land. You only have to specify that. Well, with the ag entity, it is that there's no question, it is non-homestead, but we don't actually have to say that so blatantly. We can say, and this is what the wording they came up with, was ag entity linked. And I personally like that wording. It tells them that, it's linked back to their ag property. And I guess they're kind of a little bit responsible for knowing what that means. And then, of course, the sister code, the 108, is the rural vacant. That would work the same way. As well, the new, code, 218, that was in the laws last year, which is the community land trust, which will state homestead, because now that is eligible for homestead. So any questions or disagreements about those descriptions that will change on the T and Ts? Okay, and as well, I just brought here what the instructions say, and the DOR gives us a lot of latitude on what we say. As far as the tax statements, the truth in taxation, it just asks, because there's always, especially on tax statements, a room issue. There's a room issue. We have like this much to print what you are. And they said that make it as clear as you possibly can. And if a parcel is split, identify all classes. Well, we print at least 3, if not 4. So we try our best to get everything in so they know what their split classes are. As well, we do add relative to that if you are a relative homestead. And truth in taxation is pretty much the same, except that they require you put the homestead status, which we do. Okay, any objection to those class changes? All right. So the next issue that we discussed at the assessors meeting really mainly probably was your office, but some assessors do the parcel input. So we did bring it up there because it came from an assessor. Please allow last year's assessment to print, even if there was a split on the parcel. Many of the changes made to the legal description do not affect the property value. I would rather explain the change in value than the blank column of unrecorded values. Okay, well, there is a way to actually avoid that. And not on a true split, but in parcel maintenance, and I'm just going to go through this. This has been there for years, but when you do your F2 to split your parcel or combine or whatever you're doing, it asks you if you want to save the description yes, no, and M. And what the M means is maintenance only. So what I'm getting at is, yes, if it's a true split and you put a yes there, you'll print NAs. If not, if it's just some sort of maintenance, like I got a couple little things wrong on the description and I'm just cleaning that up, and it has nothing to do with the values and all of that, the acre splitting or whatever. You would use the M and that would continue to print on your 3 notices, T&Ts, tax statements, valuation notices. And I just want to make sure that everyone knows what that is.
So I have a question about, have used the M for a long time. I think it was probably my county that asked for it originally. It was when we were cleaning up legal descriptions to match up to our GIS system. When we were going back and researching, we didn't want to create a split that wiped out anything on the tax statement, but we wanted to put a hard stop to an old bad description. But yet have it out there that it would match that, yep, that's what it said in 2007, and that would match a tax statement, that was set. But the question I have then is, if it was truly a split, so would you just actually be wanting to hold the old value information in the top, but you really don't want to do the comparison of the taxes? Because are there other implications outside of that for like a, getting a refund, a property tax refund? Is it tied between that change in amount? It would have to go up, right?
Well, if you printed that from the last year, well, we don't print anything. I mean,
Well, you wipe out the top, the value, and
and
you
all the
wipe
way
out
down.
the tax amount.
Yeah.
But if you do an M, it's gonna leave all the full
Yeah.
history,
Yeah,
which is that conflicting for any other Department of Revenue refund type comparison stuff?
I don't know how it could, because that doesn't do a compare from year to year. If you were doing your PTR, it's for that year, right?
I'm asking you today.
Bill?
Hey, Bill, are you listening?
No, I did miss that bit. Sorry. No, I've been,
Hey, Bill, it's your troublemaker. I'm talking.
hold on. This is a room full of troublemaker. I realized when I walked in. Can you hear me? Oh. So repeat the question, please.
Okay, so, the property tax refund calculation type thing. So when they do their, if they request a property tax refund, it would be comparison on the same tax statement, correct? But they wouldn't get a refund if it were a split, we're saying, because the taxes would actually be down in the current year. Is that, anyone else have anything to add on that?
I'd have to look into that because of even though it's called the property tax refund, it's actually calculated by individual income tax and withholding. So we're part, it has our name in it, but I'm not sure about where for that PTR they're looking at.
Wasn't there a refund too based off of it was a certain percent of increase over from year to year too?
Right, for the special.
So this would be the opposite case because I think it would be hard pressed to have a split, have the value and the taxes increase, right?
On a combined, you might, but not a split, no.
When aren't we saying that if it's a true split or combined, you would say yes to that, and then all the values would be wiped out? It's when you're not actually splitting or combining, you're just changing the description and you want to see the old description that you put an M, in which case you're not changing anything about the parcel except some of the wording in the description.
And then all your values would print, just like they did.
Is that what the assessor was asking for?
The assessor was asking for.
No, I was gonna get to that. I just wanted to reiterate that we do have the M and make sure everyone knew about that and what it means. No, that is not what this assessor is asking about. And along those lines, we have 2 counties that it was added many, many years ago and we'll be contacting you. It happens to be Meeker and Lax. No, they Lax is here. That even if it is a true split, meaning it is a yes, we still print the values. we still print them. That's what he's asking for, and it is not one of those two counties. But my question is along those lines, Jim. Like, in E-tax, do we have to make that a question? Is that something that people are still interested in? I don't even know if Meeker and Mille Lacs are still interested in this. This was many years ago. And so before we get to TNTs, we'll have to address that with them. But do you know, Barb? No, okay. But my question today is this something you're interested in, that we would need it as an option in E-tax? And you can think about that. We aren't quite to that point in E-tax, but we would be wanting to know that fairly soon.
And the option would be to print the old and the new, even if there's a true
Even if
split
it is
combined.
a true split combined.
And do we want to do that for all, or this would be an extra question? Yes,
Yes.
we're splitting, extra question, do you want to print both values?
Yes.
Is that an option that we want to have available in the future?
Can't help but talk. My hesitation with leaving that on all the time probably goes down the same realm as the assessors not wanting something to say non-homestead. Because you're still gonna get those people that are gonna call in and question the changes that happened potentially. Those two are not comparing apples to apples, right? To have them side by side. I can see the value possibly at the top, but I'm not clearly on that either.
So you would be a no. But let's leave it at this. It was thrown out there. We will circle back on this, give it some thought. And along those lines, we are going to reach out to Meeker and Mille Lacs to see if they actually still want that. Because things get changed when we have certain personnel and then they leave and the new ones don't even know there is such a thing going on. And after years, it gets forgotten. That's one thing that the tax rewrite has brought to light is hard coding within our system for certain things for certain counties. So you may hear more about that later.
Possibly an opinion from the Department of Revenue of what they are expecting to be seen on our 30+ counties tax statements. You know, if they have an opinion on what we should be doing that way, or if that was always just our will.
Okay.
I like to think, generally speaking, seeking guidance from the Department of Revenue is kind of like going into a dark black bowl. And I say that in the best of ways and intentions, that I think the less guidance you get in some ways, we don't have tax statement police or the TNT police. I mean, I know that we're being recorded here, so I have to be a little more careful than usual, but I mean, if you ask us for guidance, it will go down a long, long process before you will get something back. And I don't even know if it would be very usable. I like to say that I'm only aware of problems when they're brought to my attention. And by the way, this group is really good at bringing problems to my attention. Looking around, I realize I'm not even going to talk about the state general tax because of the first thing I'm going to do when I get back to the office. So for those of you who don't have problems with your state general tax, just forgot I even said that, but I can't even look at half of the people in this room. Getting back to the guidance thing, as I say, this goes back to the TNT issue, the first one that our current commissioner, Paul Marquardt, was responsible for implementing. That things get lost in that whole transparency thing, that we think we're doing the right, or legislators think they're doing the right thing by asking for the impossible, because it sounds really easy. I'll just put it on your valuation, or just put it on. We, at the Department of Revenue, are now pretty used to the fact that they ask for frequently almost the impossible. And there's no way that we can track all of these things. In short, what I'm saying is that do your best effort at, it's a great thing that you don't have to do the fiscal disparities thing. I feel horrible for the range people. And there was talk about doing it in the metro, for the metro fiscal disparities. So we're hoping that whole TNT thing actually will go away. I've drifted from the question, but I'm saying that guidance is so yeah, talk to us when you really want guidance, but it will, once that process of getting formal guidance takes place, it all becomes more regimented. It all becomes something that you maybe didn't want in the first place. Call me first.
I just have a comment, I would say I agree with Janelle on, once you have that split, because you're not comparing apples to apples, that just causes those taxpayers more confusion, I think, versus now you're the new owner, here's your data going forward, because otherwise they're gonna try and roll.
Well, this would always be an option. This would never force that you would have to print it that way. We're asking if we should add it as an option, not forcing you to do that by any means.
Well, and I think you had the option already by pointing out they could, if they really want to go away from that, they can use the M. And that, but the other thing, it isn't just the taxpayer getting that statement. We know everybody's neighbor looks at their stuff, and they're the ones that are gonna call and say, how come their taxes went down and mine didn't? Right?
So after the assessors meeting, I put on my to-do list to make a simple document that explains the Y and M process. Because the assessors were saying, in some counties, it's the recorder that does it in some counties. And then there was some conversation about possibly the person making the split doesn't understand when they choose that Y and M what it does. So we will be sending out a document that just explains that to both the assessors and the auditors. And within your counties, you can have conversations about how that's happening, and hopefully that fixes the issue. If it doesn't, we can have ongoing conversation about adding an additional option.
As well, we'll be talking to Meeker and Relax about taking that away, perhaps. So we'll see on that one. Okay, moving on. This was brought to our attention several years ago, and I just wanted to bring it back around to make sure you know that this year on your tax statements, there will be an additional, so last year I foolishly promised, yes, we can do that without looking first. And we only had one net tax field in there. And by the time I got to doing it or getting it scheduled, the outsourcers were like, no, too late. So we'll get that earlier and we'll get that done. And to explain what it is, it only affects when there's advance payments. When there's advance payments, the question was asked and approved by you all that we would change this net tax field on the stub right here so that it would be reduced by that advance payment. Of course, up above your net tax is going to remain the same because that's what it was. Okay, so that, and the second thing, forum asked this, and it seems right that because Now, some counties are trying to pull their statement and their valuation notice into one envelope. And they ask that we make the addresses match, so it's easier for them to do their compares, which sounds reasonable to me. And so we will be doing that too for the outsourced files, so the taxpayer name, address fields all match. And the issue was that in one, we were taking out the blank lines and in the other one we weren't. And in one, we had a separate city, state zip, and then in the other one, we just had it flushed into an address field. So that's just for them, and it won't affect you in any way, and we will get that done and get the specs out to them so they see them. Okay, moving on, safe at home. So everyone that doesn't have this, lucky you. We don't have many counties that have it, and but when you get one, it's always a concern because this is protected data. This is protected data, and we have to.
By statute.
Yes, and we have to do our best to do that. And thanks to Susie, in her previous life, she worked for an attorney and had dealt with the safe at home people. And so we had one real basic question about, it talks about the name, that anything that comes to safe at home has to have a name, and then of course the same PO box and St. Paul. And we were very concerned because, well, first of all, in our counties, the taxpayer number, we saw counties were putting a parcel on there. Well, a parcel isn't a name. And so we were concerned, well, how will that work when it comes to safe at home? What are they going to allow that? And what's going on? So that was the call to them. Is that all right? And thankfully, that is fine. They had already made accommodations for that. And so they have a cross-reference of parcel numbers. And so when it comes to them, they know who to send it to. So, okay, so what kicked this off was, first of all, we never reported this except in the way it was in our system to the PTR file. But about, 3 years ago, they told us, yes, you have to report them, and you have to report the true name, and you have to report their lot number, which is, their name and lot number is the identifying piece for them down at Safe at Home, as well as their social security number. So yes, you have to do this. So it says that at Safe at Home, you have to separate identity and location. So that's fine. We did our PTR file, and this is just what it looks like. I mean, I know you don't maybe care, but what we did is to separate name and location, we put in their true name and lot number and social security, but then everything else was pretty bogus. Like their property address, even their detailed taxing district was all nines. Their property address was 123 Anywhere Street and things like that. And their parcel number is even 999. So no location information. So that took care of that. But then we get to our tax statements. Well, our tax statements, our value notices, our T&Ts, they all have location information. We have legal descriptions, we have property addresses, we have all of it. So what we are suggesting, and the ladies again have together a directive or how to do this in the CPT system. And through our research, I think we've got a really great way that adheres to the law and everything else. So we are suggesting you do use the parcel number as the taxpayer name. So when the tax statements go out or the T&Ts that are coming up, that's the address, name and address that will be on there, a parcel number and a PO box. And then when all that other location information is on there, there will be no name attached. Okay, so now we get to the PTR file. So we have two options on tax extra, X20, and one is web excluded maintenance. So we suggest that you exclude these from the web. That's up to you, but we suggest that. But the second piece that must be done is we have the safe at home maintenance. And all that is you attach it to a parcel number, you put in their name, their true name, their lot number, and their social security. This is encrypted. It never goes on any document in our system except for the PTR file. Any questions on that? Like I said, if you get a safe at home, all you have to do is contact our office and you'll be helped through it. Okay, a few months back, I was asked if the TIF digit could go from 2 to 3 digits. Now that sounds like really simple, right? It's not really simple in our system because we have 2 digits all over the place in files. And at this stage, to go back through the old system and rework that, I don't think we can do that, but I contacted the DOR and Jason North, maybe you know him, got back to me and gave me a great idea,
Jason Nord works for the state auditor.
Okay.
He used to work for the Department of
Oh.
Revenue years ago, but I did work with him, but yeah, I just want to correct that.
Okay.
He's the TIF man, he's the director of TIF at OSA.
Okay, all right. So what he told me was this number right here that we have as a 2-digit, can you just make that piece a 3-digit? Okay, well, yeah, I think we can. So this is our proposal, and I don't think we're gonna make it for this tax statement run, but what happened with that county is, since we have data back to like 1996 or whatever, there were old districts that really weren't in the system anymore. So we could reuse a few of those until we get this going. But so the bottom line is that when you establish your district, so let's talk about the top one. One, it's decertified. Obviously, when you add, reuse a district and make this one a 101, you would have to use a decertified district. Because we can't use one we're already using currently. So we'd have to use an old one. And and my suggestion would be start with your oldest. Because every once in a while, if something's been decertified only a year or 2 ago, something comes around and we have to bring it back, or we have to, who knows what. But I would start with my oldest. So we'll say 1 is your oldest. So what you would do is this will stay right here as 1, decertified. And then we will be adding a new one. We'll just say it's 101. And you'll put all your information in, and we'll make it clear somewhere in here that the CPT district number is not 101. And I'm sorry, I have 2 there, but it is not 10, it is not 1. This is 101, but you would put in 1. And seriously, I think that everything will be fine. The only place we really go back to those decertified districts and get anything out of here is an inquiry when we put the name of the district. And we'll just have to look at decert dates if there's duplicates and figure out, oh, well, this was decertified in 2012 and this is a 2011. Yeah. This is the description we need. So that's a plan. That's a plan, man. So any thoughts on that? Feeling sorry for the ones that already have their TI districts filled up a little, but other than that. You getting there, Janelle?
Not quite yet.
Okay, so that is our plan coming up for TI districts. Now we'll move on to one of our favorite things, and that is PRISM. So I think, and I had talked to Val and Megan about this before I left last time, that I felt we weren't submitting our PRISM at the right time. And I think it got started this way because like the first few years, everybody was scrambling, even the DOR, that when you could submit it, I mean, we had to get moving. We had to get our tax statements out. We had to, and we were fighting with PRISM and this was wrong and that was wrong and whatever. So we just kind of adopted the procedure that we're going to submit PRISM after our tax statements are gone and we've updated the treasurers and, oh, yeah, now we're going to submit PRISM and yikes, this is wrong. And that's wrong, and oh, this rate doesn't really come out, and all of that. And this is not good. I mean, we've sent tax statements. We can't just like take them back. Sure, we can resend them, but what if it's a whole city? Or what if, and I think that we've worked through that process with almost all of you, not every year, not every time, blah, blah, blah. But there's been that problem. And so what I think, and I did contact the DOR to see when they accept PRISM 1 and 3. And truthfully, we don't really care about 1. And I don't mean that in the sense of you don't care because you're auditors, but I mean that in the sense of what's PRISM 1? Market values. My gosh, I hope you can get through that. But when you get to PRISM 2, and this year was fun times with our state assessed, and we're going to have to look at that. I'll get back to that in a second. But when we get to PRISM 3, wow, we can have problems. And so what I'm proposing is that we change our procedure. They're talking about March 1st. They accept PRISM 1 and 3. I wish it was February 15th, but that's kind of, because we have auditors that, boy, that's really important to them to get their tax statements out like by the end of February and the 1st of March. And I don't think this scenario will work for them, but what we'd like to do is, and we'll have to make some changes on our end, but you would work all the way through tax calc. And then when you're satisfied that your tax calc totals are right, then we would submit PRISM. And you would be working with your outsourcer or Sue or whoever does your tax statements to be getting the proofs in and getting everything the way you want it. But you would not do your tax statements until you would get at least a PRISM submission that says it's good. I mean, it can always come back and have some problems with that, but you could go all the way through and get your PRISM completed and then send your tax statements, then update to treasurers, and I think we would be in much better shape. I really, truly do. And so we're going to make the changes on our end to make that happen if you choose. Of course, if you don't want to do it that way and you want to continue to do it the way you have been, that will work too. Because the main thing we're going to have to look for is if the update to treasurers has been run. And if it hasn't, we can just do a little fake one behind the scenes and use that information, and it will all work fine. And if the actual update to treasurers has been run, we'll use that data. But that's what we're suggesting. Also, I want to talk about mobile home submission 4, and this is actually really on us. So what the DOR said about, or the PRISM team said about submission 4 is that as soon as your submission 3 is marked completed, you can do your submission 4. Now, I know you all do your mobile home statements at different times, but we don't send out the PRISM sequence for 4 until maybe August 1st or somewhere in there. And you need to do your PRISM 4 like the same way we're going to do the real estate. You need to get to your tax totals and they're good, and then you need to submit PRISM, and then you do your statements and update to treasurers. Because there can be trouble in mobile home statements too. And one trouble there is when we didn't send out that sequence for so long, changes were being made in the mobile home. If you sent out your statements fairly early, there was the assessors like, oh, okay, they're gone. Yeah, I'm good. I can make some changes, value changes. Well, that does not go well with PRISM at all. And we do use that value information to submit. So, okay. Any thoughts on that? Okay, I just want to go back just a little bit and talk about a couple things that we have done and we want to do to help those problems that we have. One thing we've talked about, and this will be there for TNTs in a couple of weeks, is when you accumulate your abstract, the assessors, and maybe you do for mobile homes, I'm sure you don't for the regular real estate, your assessors do that. But and this is never an accusation, it's always, we get busy and we think we did it. How many times have I made a recipe and thought I put in whatever and you taste it and oh my God, I must have forgotten. Okay, so that happens, it happens. We get busy and we forget a step. Well, certain steps that you would forget are really bad. So like forgetting to do 3, calculate tax capacity before you do 4 is not good. So what we are proposing is we want to add 3 into 4. So every time you would accumulate your abstract, we're going to run a tax capacity calc. Now, obviously, we're going to leave 3. Your assessors do that throughout the year, and they can still do that. But we want to make sure that 3 is done when we do 4. So the other thing is, and this happened a couple years ago at TNT time, someone called me and said, I just don't know. I don't think this tax capacity is right. So the first thing I did is I went and looked when that assessor's abstract was run. Well, it hadn't been run since March. So of course, rates were wrong because they weren't on the right tax capacity. So got to thinking about that, and it's like, well, why am I looking at that file? We can just tell you when that file was accumulated last. So we put that into rate maintenance. And all I can say is this: when you see that date, believe it, because that date is when it was run. I don't care how many listings they give you with the current date on. That doesn't mean that that option that does your assessor's abstract accum was run on that date. That's why that date is here. And so it's for you. It's for you to help you. And then the last point in is that if for some reason you have to change your tax capacities, and the ladies go through this every year, you know that you have to go in and you can just field exit through, and it will recalculate your rates. But what doesn't happen sometimes is if you're too far down the road, you need to go back into where you enter your disparities, and you have to go through all those as well. It's a lot of work when there's a problem that way, but that step has to be done as well. Okay, and the final thing is our state assessed property that was kind of a nightmare for your assessors this year, because we didn't really know it was coming. And so one thing that we've kind of figured out is that the transmission lines that are true countywide should not have a valid detailed taxing district. They need like a bogus one. So what we're going to be working on, and we have to get true clarification before we do this, but that transmission lines, because they are countywide taxed, will go into like a 9909s dealio. That will be a bogus detailed taxing district that will only hold those countywide tax parcels. And then there's the whole other piece of state assessed property, but that won't be your property. Okay, that is all I have this morning. Anyone else? Okay.
Sure. So. Hello, can you hear me? No? Well, usually I've got a pretty loud voice. There, now it's louder. So when I walked in, I was a little disappointed with myself because I didn't realize this would be a pretty big crowd, and that this could have been a much bigger platform for me to run a bigger, better message. But I can come back anytime. So I do this with all of the other vendors, actually. This is my first time with CPT Group. I'm a little curious about how decision-making takes place. So there's some things that I can find out outside of a meeting like this. I guess I just wanted to be present on behalf of the department. Again, I didn't realize how many people out here have outstanding issues with me, and I promise to get back to those. So we've gone through a little bit of a change in management at the Department of Revenue, and I think we kind of settled into a system now, which I think we can expect times, turnarounds, guidance, that kind of thing to be a little slower than it has. I think that now the kind of regime right now we're less of a Wild West, not like we were a Wild West kind of organization, but I think our guidance and any questions that are directed our way are probably going to wind their way through legal departments, and we'll be a little slower. I'm just saying that up front to give you what I know is happening on behalf of the department. I was glad to see a lot of these simple questions came up. I was here ready to be a crack intermediary between PRISM and this, but I couldn't get on the internet. But nothing came up that needed me to ask them anything about. Generally speaking, I like coming to these meetings because I think that a lot of times when you just see the department's face, you can unload on it a little easier than just calling or emailing, and that's fine. I'm good at getting unloaded. Years and years of practice, I got really thick skin. So I mean, feel free. A lot of you do know. Feel free to tell me what you really feel. I'm, again, not looking at people in particular. But generally speaking, I will continue to come to these things. I'll have a recap of where we are. I'll probably solicit you in advance for questions and things that you want me to address. I mean, when it comes down to
organization, like who should I talk to when it comes to this? And you know, basically those kind of things. Anyway, I'm hoping in the future I can be a fixture of the meeting. So with that, I'll take any questions and I don't sit down. And by the way, there are only 2 men in this room. Evidently, Mike and Pete. Strange. You go to an assessors meeting and there are women, but it's mostly men. So,
Questions, comments, suggestions, and Mike, I can go around it.
and if you want to privately harangue me and I've just triggered that, you can do that later too.
And I'm gonna survey the room too, is there any interest in them bringing back the in-person property tax course? Or is everybody happy with it online?
So
We're getting something.
So the property tax exam thing kind of went sideways. And it got triggered by, I guess, what someone at the department thought was bad acting. And I think that our reaction was a little over the top and it was a little without a lot of input and a lot of communication. And we do have an obligation to make sure that people are tax kept. But I encourage people to send the department, in my unit in particular, the AT group, your thoughts on this whole new, it's a much more rigid thing. You used to be able to take that exam on the toilet on Sunday on your phone. And now it's a little more complicated, and I get that. So just to address that, we're open to feedback because I know that decision came down without a lot of interaction between the counties.
When did the testing change?
It was a reaction on the agency's part that we found that there was essentially, if there can be collusion in test taking by one county. And I think that management just felt that, we had been maybe a little lax in how this was going and that we needed to make it a more significant direct, okay, this is how it happens and this is when it happens. And yeah, I think it ruffled some feathers. I don't like when I've had full access to being able to do kind of what I want in my time frame to be told, oh no, now this is how you do it. Oh, and by the way, it's taking time during elections or the timing, I think, has also been a problem with a lot of the counties. And I think then when we were randomly throwing darts monthly, they fell on some bad times. So, question, which wasn't even from me, I just opened my mouth. I'm glad to hear you're talking about this because I got a lot of feedback on that when it first got rolled out. And so I think we are flexible about hearing input from you folks.
And my point was, when would you ever bring back in-person training for that? Because coming from the auditor treasurer world, having to take that exam, we first had to become trained assessors, understand all these tiers and the R&B and the market value and NTC and da, da, da. Whereas in our own actual real life world, that data just gets handed to us. And then we take it from there and calculate tax. We don't calculate the tax capacity of the market value. That comes from the assessor world. So for us to pass that exam, we first have to become trained assessors, understand their world before we can then, because if you start out with that wrong data, you don't know how to calculate that, everything else thereafter is going to be wrong. So having attended the in-person class myself some years back, that was way more beneficial than trying to understand all of this online.
I think because there's so many of us that are going to be hiring and there's so many new people, I feel bad for the new people. And yeah, people can say it's COVID, now everything's online and it's Zoom. they need that in person to learn, like Vicky's saying, the first steps. There's so much to the auditor treasurer world that I think new staff is missing. And we're not always there to give them the in-person training ourselves because we're trying to get the day-to-days done. So we do as much training on hand in the office that we can do, but it's like frustrating. So I think the in-person is all around, even in an auditor treasurer category, not just tech.
So that's true. I mean, is that kind of the general consensus here? That's great. And we've been hearing that. So, you know, I think during the pandemic, that exacerbated some of the turnover. I know there are a lot of new faces out there. It's been probably 7 or 8 years since we've had a full sit-down AT meeting. They're hard. They're hard to organize. They're hard to take our staff. We're a smaller group now. Where do we have them? Do we have them in St. Cloud? Do we have them in St. Paul? Do we have two? So these are questions that I'll bring this back. And I think that in seeing that this is actually such a widespread feeling, I have a feeling that we will end up going back to doing the AT full on course. You know, there's a cost to that. It slows us down. I know that the people who will be in charge of rolling this out will want to make sure that it's rolled out in a very fastidious way, which is what everyone should want. So I'll take this back. I'm glad to hear that because we're having problems. I mean, I think that we would spend better time upfront training people than dealing with the problems that take place after the problem. So, okay.
Just to add on to that comment where Vicky said you have to kind of become an assessor before you can even take the test.
That's a good point.
Does it not make more sense to maybe just require counties to have an assessor from their department take the assessor side so that, you know, we know the data we're getting to us is good. And then we just need to know what we need to do, or why do we have to know it all?
I can always count on you to ask me, why do we need to do these things? Well, mainly because of statute. I mean, it's always good to ask, why are we doing these things? And frequently we can say, we don't need to do them because we made this up. But this is one of those things that we have a statutory obligation. I'll have to look into the details about what that involves and how that is involved, because obviously there's some leeway there. But send me your ideas. I mean, we'll circulate anything.
Well, and as we're looking for topics for regional trainings and for our summer and winter conferences, we could look at piggybacking, having you have potentially time ahead or after during those to have those sessions. You wouldn't necessarily have to have a ton of sessions outside of when a lot of us are already meeting.
So that is a wonderful idea. And so we're trying to look at maybe hybrid things like that, where if we can tack on to where we know there'll be a regional meeting, we don't need to do the whole AT course, but we can have a module of it.
Or that training for taking the test.
Yeah, and we used to have 3 and 4 day.
I
which-
actually was trained by Jason and Derek when they used to do that for the
Yeah.
Department of Revenue.
I used to do it too.
I like Jason and Derek.
Better than me, thank you. And we used to have Chris Samuel occasionally help to teach those, and he's a brilliant PT. But his sense of timing is way off. And he was giving a presentation at 10 in the morning. He didn't show up till 11:30. So I gave a presentation that I had memorized on the power line credit, and a lot of the people in there had already seen me give it at like the SABS call forum or something. So I just did it in an old time radio voice, and I stuck with it for 50 minutes. I gave a presentation talking like an old time radio. But so we can have fun with these AT things. They don't need to be, you know, as you say, 2, 3, 4 days. If we can, so the tax cut thing sounds like that would be high on your list. Well, all of these things are open. When I go back, today, I'll mention that we need training and we need it in person. We're just gonna have to find time to make it. It was. Yeah. Anyone else? Thank you. Having me back. Good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, if that's it, it's lunchtime. And it looks like our lunch is ready. So are we good to break for an hour here? Julie wants to go first. Julie does not like public speaking. We're all gonna be really good to her. Go ahead. Julie will be 5 minutes. Julie won't be able to eat if we make her wait till after lunch. So we're gonna let Julie start. I'm wondering for people in Zoom, Mike, when you're in Zoom, which one are you seeing? Are you seeing what's on the screen?
No.
Yeah,
We can see the
How do
text
we-
jail interface.
play settings.
We're seeing the note.
Right, there we go. All right. So Julie's gonna share and then we'll break for lunch.
I'm going to talk about interfacing tax GL into, or tax settlement into IFX. Talk about the benefits of using GL. I was surprised when I started here that more counties don't use this. It is kind of a time-consuming thing, but that's what we're here for. We're here to help you get that set up. Benefits are your tax settlement will go directly from the tax system into IFS. They'll do a receipt batch and it'll do a disbursement batch. There's no need to create spreadsheets or any of that stuff. It's all there for you. There's less chance for error, and most of these are just a one-time setup, except for like ditches, assessments, those kind of things that you might have to do every year. The menu is in the auditor's menu, and it's called the settlement interface to. This is a good time to get out your initial tax rates that you are using, your special assessment listings. That's where you'll get your information. Good way to tie them together. This is, you can add your funds and your GL for both the tax system and IFS here. You can add your special assessments, your ditches. There's a line for each levy, each special assessment, so you won't miss anything. When you go in there, you'll have two sides. The one side is your tax billing fields. Those are going to match up to your initial tax rate listing, and your other side is IFS. IFS side is a little bit larger because it's a little more defined. On this side is your taxes. This is where you'll want to grab your initial tax rate listing to do the maintenance on that side. Your tax fund types, it's going to be, I put the initial tax rate so you can see where you can grab your rates. The 1 is the township, or 1 is the county, 3 is your township, 5 is school districts, and you'll be able to match those up on your initial tax rate listing. I also put an example of the entity number because it's the fund number and then it's the entity number. So you're also going to grab that from your initial tax rate listing to add into the maintenance screen. I'm going to talk to, I don't know how many work with IFS, but the first number, the 70 that I put up on top, is the fund and department that's going to match up with fund on the tax side. And then the next 3 numbers are going to divide it up even more. So it's like general, and then it's going to go to other county funds that you may have. Program and service doesn't get used a lot unless you have divided a lot between your human services departments. And then the last 4 digits is the GL object number, and those are your current real estate, delinquent real estate, homes, delinquent, they all have a different number that you'll be using when you do the maintenance on the tax side. Then after you get it all entered, you're gonna wanna proof it to make sure everything's entered, and you're gonna do, you can like on your edit listing. Proof that all out. And then, you're gonna wanna go and capture your tax settlement like you normally do for your taxes. And you're gonna go into option number 4. And then this is where you will pick the settlement that you're doing, if it's June, October, November, December. But make sure that you're capturing that settlement before you come and do this, or it will not grab the right information. Where I talked about prepping for settlement, choose the wrong settlement and didn't accumulate the right one, it's gonna send your old information over. And then this is another good report to run before you send it on over. It's gonna give you any errors. The errors will be at the top with the 0, so you'll know like, oh, I got the 0. I must have forgot to enter a special assessment. Then you can go back into the GL maintenance and enter the correct special assessment in there if needed. And then option 7 is the vendor summary list. This will print out all the checks that are going to be printed out. It's not going to show you the county money, and it's not going to show you the money that's being receipted into your townships as a big club or your school districts. This will just be the checks that are getting paid out in your disbursement batch. And last, you're going to create your tax settlement transactions and financial. It's going to bring you up. You'll be able to choose the real estate, mobile homes, whatever at the top. If you want to include your refunds, if you don't, the date, and make sure that you are choosing an IFS user that has access to all this information. Or you can send it to yourself if you have access to IFS. Then it's going to create 2 batches in IFS. The one side is the receipts. That's going to throw it into all the right accounts. It's going to throw it into your county funds, right where you want it. And then the other batch is going to go to your auditor vouchers, and those are going to be all your payments that you're going to make and send out to entities. Unfortunately, they're both called tax settlement receipts, but they're in 2 different spots, so you won't have to worry about it. You do find that you sent the wrong batch over, you can delete it and send it back over. Taxes can send it back over to you. And then you just process your receipt batch, and you can process your checks just like you normally do in IFS.
Just a comment there too, for those people that have a lot of payments that they make. You can just go in and manually enter your voucher batch and add those few manual things versus having to put everything in. That's one of the advantages. I mean, you're still going to probably have to enter some things in that voucher batch, but it should be pretty minimal.
Okay, so I have 2 little things. One, back on your screen where you do your entry, if there are new special assessments that are not set up or you don't have set up, you will not be able to move through. It will not accumulate for you. You will have to fix them. It will bring up a black screen showing you all the ones that don't have the full ledger set up. So you will not be able to run a listing and actually get your settlement. You'll have to fix all of them first. And then the other thing I know we talked about one other meeting, the refund settlement area has a different GL interface set up. We talked about having those mirror. Is that truly happening? Or I don't have anything to argue or dispute that, but it has been.
It adds a refund automatically.
It is populating the refund side.
Back into a line item and change it.
In the refund side, it won't override or.
Side, or vice versa. It won't go back and forth on a change. You have to change both.
So if it's a new ad, it will come across into the refund side. But if you change an existing, it will not change it either way.
Just one more comment on setup, just as a helpful hint. starting with the rates is good, but before you, in your proofing, I would also pull your latest abstract, because then you know what all the money has to go out if there's a special that wasn't added or, but it has been already. It'll show you, I mean, that's a good proof too, because your abstract would have everything that's out there. I just look at my tax and my settlement abstract that you print. Oh, yeah, I just call my abstract, but yeah, sorry.
It might be your settlement reports. But back to what Janelle said, if you get your GL, you think it's all set up and you missed something, the system will tell you that you missed something and you need to add it before you can do it. So I think most of you are using our GL. How many of you here are using our GL? Yeah, like the vast majority, but for those who aren't, we just want to really encourage you to do this. We now have Julie who supports both sides. She supports tax for us and she supports IFS. So for getting it set up, a lot of times you have somebody who's the tax side and somebody who's the IFS side, and it's overwhelming to try to do both. But it is so helpful to set it up one time. And then after that, just to be able to upkeep it instead of having to like redo it every time you're doing settlements, if you're doing your own Excel spreadsheets or whatever. So if you are interested in this, it's good to it's a lot of information the first time. Get started early, well before you're ready to do settlement. But Julie is happy to help you, come sit with you or Zoom or call or whatever and get it set up, right? Any other questions or comments? All right, so we have lunch here. For those of you on Zoom, we'll be taking like an hour lunch. We'll be back 12:30 or maybe a little bit afterward. And then we will continue through the afternoon.
All right.
Pause it.
Pause.
Yeah.
Pause. I don't.
What time in the afternoon?
What happened? Oh, I sent out an email. It's not about agenda. Let me grab.
All right, well, thank you again. We had a lunch that was, everybody liked, but, we're up next. I think Shannon will be, doing the next section, so. And again, if you have any questions, just ask. Yes.
Again, I'm Shannon, and I'm gonna go over the auditor's cross-county. And this you will complete after your assessors have completed their cross-county sequence. You will want to make sure that you have good communication with the assessors and make sure that they have maintained and updated their cross-county Y records. Make sure they've provided neighboring counties with cross-county Y records, received and entered cross-county and record values for neighboring assessors, and then calculated their tax capacity for your county's parcels once all of the above is completed. And once those steps are done with the assessors, then you can calculate taxes. And then you can also proof them. And you'll want to refer to the TNT sequence for instructions on how to do this. When you do this, this will calculate your excess credit values needed for the next step. And the next step is to share your excess credits with neighboring county auditors, and those are your home county Y records. This listing will generate the amount of ag credit used by your county and any excess credit calculated. When you create this listing, it will generate a page for each of your neighboring counties
And then the neighboring counties will apply the excess credit to parcels in their counties. And this is in the auditor side in tax M22, and you will choose option 13, which is list carryover credits. And then on the printing options page, you will choose number 2, which is calculated credits by county by carryover MP numbers. And in the lower right-hand side, you'll see there's an example of a listing. I guess it looks like part of it isn't showing, but the first parcel has the all right, so that first parcel, you can see that my county used $490 for the A credit. And then for the second parcel listed, my county only used $185.76. So then there is an excess A credit of $304.24, and that will go to the neighboring county. We'll also be receiving excess A credits, and those are your home county and records. Neighboring counties should provide you with any of these excess credit A credits, just as you had provided them in the prior slide. As you receive this information, enter it into your system. If a neighboring county is not part of the Mid-State Co-op, their listing will be different, but it should contain the same data. Remember that not all counties, including yours, have excess A credits. Excess credits only occur when the amount of credits exceed total A tax due on that parcel. If you do not have any A credits for neighboring counties, make sure that the carryover credit maintenance screen on the next slide is cleared out. If not, the excess credit will be given to this parcel last year, and then you'll have problems when you calculate taxes. So you will, to maintain the excess A credits, you will go to menu tax M22 again, and you'll choose number 3, which is maintain carryover credits. And you'll see on the bottom right-hand corner screenshot of the maintenance screen. And what you want to make sure is cleared out from last year is the information under the column excess credit A. And to clear it out, you'll just need to field exit through each of those lines. Now you're ready to enter the excess A credits in that maintenance screen if you have any. If taxpayers own A property in more than one county, you should now enter the amounts as shown by the county numbers or the sequence numbers on the right-hand side of the maintenance screen. And then when you're done with that, you're ready to calculate your taxes and make sure you also, if you did not have anything that you entered into that screen, but you cleared out your excess A credits from last year, make sure you still go ahead and calculate your taxes again so that they're correct. And again, you would just refer to your TNT sequence for that, and then you can your taxes. And that's all I have for that one. Are there any questions?
Hi, everybody. I'm Liz Dingman, and I support Minnesota Tax and North Dakota Tax. And I'll be talking to you about rate input in preparation for the TNT sequence coming out in a couple weeks. Right? Okay. The first thing that we've all talked about is verify your final assessor's abstract has been done and accumulated. Very important. And also, I talk about this all the time with my North Dakota counties. I know this is a Minnesota meeting, but it's important to have this kind of short-term cutoff date that the assessor's office stops making changes, preparation for the auditor's office to do their thing, okay? In North Dakota, I call it a handshake agreement between the offices. And I don't know if you guys have those relationships or if you guys run into trouble where the assessor's office might sneak in a couple more changes and not alert you guys. Does that happen? Okay. So I don't know if
Is that a question or a statement?
it happens, and then. Right, but then they're like off, and they're like, well, I know that this is right, and then we'll talk about, well, let's find where it's off, and then we'll see like, oh, there were some changes made after the assessor's abstract was run. So then they have to determine, are you gonna fix it back, or are you gonna, whatever the circumstances, so have a little cutoff time frame between changes in the cycle.
They don't get to interrupt your fire. But been doing this for years.
And every year, we have the same issue. It doesn't get better. I have communications with my assessor. Is there an option that you could put on there that we do a lockout? And other counties don't have to do it if you have a good relationship. But I would seriously pay for a lockout button. You guys do not know the beginning of, come on, Val, when beginning of this happens over and over and over, and I'm not picking on my assessor office at all. I know it's being recorded. I'm just saying that a lockout button is something I would pay big money for. I would. Is there an option of that?
Oh, Gwen?
Well.
Or? Need to say, hold on for a minute. I mean, we have to, I don't think you'd want to do it in TNT. That's not, but at tax time, I mean, we could stop, hold your changes. But.
Talking about this, prison issues and whatnot because of changes that were made. Is there still in the assessor side, like on the auditor side, where you can use that holding area for making changes? I can't think what the option's called.
Yeah.
Pending. Does the assessor have a pending file like the auditor does? Where if they feel like they want to complete the task, they can, but then it's a holding area that as soon as she says she's done, then you just run the updates. We might have to check on that, but as somebody who's been like exploring all the extra menus and trying to learn all the options, I believe I learned about that once I hit the auditor's extra menus, and I started with the assessor. I don't think I found it there.
Yes, that's number one.
Right, exactly.
Okay, well, I mean, in my scenario about this handshake agreement, it's just, I know it won't work in all counties, but it's just keep the lines of communication open between the offices so you don't run into trouble. So, and then your TNT process can go nice and smoothly, and then everything else will flow nicely. Cross your fingers. All right, so after the assessor's office stops making their changes and you guys move on with your duties and stuff, make sure that the final assessor's abstract has been completed. And if not, recalculating, accumulating, etc., you'll want those new value records added, and as well as having new capacity value. Otherwise, your truth and taxation notices, they're not going to be accurate. A helpful tip, before you do the rate file setup cleanup process, it is helpful to list last year's rate first, use it as a guideline for inputting this year's rates, because doing these once a year, you can sometimes forget oh, yeah, that's how I enter that again. And it's just nice, even for me. I will look at last year's rates, so I can input this year's. And actually, when I was inputting my rates the other day, I'm like, how did I get this in there? I'm like, oh yeah, I need to have county, city, townships, schools, all these things entered before I can move on to other things. So it was a learning process for me. It was a good reminder, so I like to tell people to print last year's up. And when you're doing your rate file setup cleanup, you're gonna go into menu tax M20 option 2 tax calc prep and reporting tax M22, and you're gonna go into option number 1, maintain your fund description tax capacity rates. And then you're gonna also select option 1, rate file setup cleanup. All you have to do in this page is type the word continue, and it's going to do the cleanup process. This is just an example of tax capacity rate types. O1 is county, O2 countywide, 3 township city, 5 schools. You guys all know this stuff. This is just a good reminder of these fund types and the rate types, excuse me. And these are already set up in your system. I mean, they don't ever change unless something new comes about. And then maintaining your fund descriptions. Here's an example. I pulled in county 01 and all the rates under county populated in for you. Then on the left-hand side, that item number from the abstract populates. It's not required, but on the abstract, or excuse me, abstract item number is not required to be entered for the rate calculation for TNTs. However, you can enter them at this time if you prefer. Okay. And on the right-hand side, I pulled in township city rate type 03, and then you can see the various rates that I have for this particular example. Once you enter those rates, they populate on the side. Next thing you're going to do is maintain, calculate initial tax rates. Menu tax M20, option number 2, tax prep, calc and reporting, and then that brings you to tax M22. You're going to do option number 1, maintain your fund description at tax capacity rates, and then option 3, your initial tax rates. So in my example again, I chose county 01, and then I put in my tax capacity value, and it will populate certain things for you, and then you can add on further screens in my slide here, you'll need to put in your gross levy and levy adjustments, etc. As well as additions and subtractions, which we'll get to a little later. Once the above information is entered, press 5 to maintain your detail rates. And then there you can put in your specific information for the funds, general, highway, debt service, etc. Enter the desired fund numbers and the gross levy amount. The levy adjustment for that line item will automatically be calculated and applied proportionately. The net levy and the rate percent will also be displayed. And just a reminder, the rates are displayed in 5 decimals, but calculated in 3 decimals. The last 2 decimal places are 0 as per the Department of Revenue guidelines. At the bottom of your screen, there's also an option to specify additional rates if they exist. If there are no additional rates, the N should be kept there. If you have additional rates such as county exception by township, you want to enter a Y. And that's on the bottom, it's on the bottom here on the yellow, so the yellow square, that's where that question is going to be. Go ahead and enter your additional rates on the right-hand side if they're applicable to your county. Once you have those rates entered, F5 to update. Once that is all done, you're going to list and prove your initial tax rates. Again, this is back in menu tax M22. Don't you feel like you live in that menu during this time? Then you're going to go to option 11, list rate types, fund. And then you're going to pick option number 1, initial tax rates. Proof your listing. If you need to make any changes, go back and make your changes and do the same process again. The next step in rate input is input your adjoining jurisdictions, values, and rates. Again, tax M22, maintain your fund description tax rates, and then go back to additional tax rates. Once your county has received those values from the neighboring counties, or like watershed, school district, et cetera, enter those and then recalculate again. And once you recalculate, you're gonna wanna list and proof again. Once everything looks good, you're gonna want to calculate and accumulate and list your tax totals again. Verify back to your levies if this is the information you're looking for and the results you're wanting. Do that first before you put in your disparity reduction aid. It'll help in proofing. If there's something not right in this spot, you'll get it before you have disparity. Again, listing and proofing your initial tax rates. Tax M22, maintain your fund description, tax capacity rates. Go to option number 4, your local tax rates, and then press F2 to select your taxing district. And then the very bottom here. Well, yeah, that we can't see that bottom part. That's. I just wanted to move it down. Okay, to get to your
Yeah, right there.
to get to those additional taxing districts, you would want to press an F2. And then you can see all the detailed taxing districts instead of typing in all that information, it populates for you. So select whatever taxing district you need to add disparity to, and it will populate. And then you can, on the bottom right-hand screen here, you can go ahead and add the aid for whatever entity is needed. Not sure why this is being. We're back where we need to be. Sorry. Once the aid amounts are entered, the applicable rates will be adjusted accordingly and automatically entered into the appropriate fields as shown in the example below. Press F5 to update the taxing district. The next taxing district will automatically populate. So on this example, I did special taxing district 16. When you press F5, if 17, if you need to do changes, 17 will populate next. After you're done with your disparity reduction aid and local tax rates, you're going to want to list and proof again, menu tax M22, option 11, list rate and type fund. Go to option 2, your disparity reduction and local tax rates. Proof your listing and make any changes as needed. Review your rates and relist if needed. If you are happy with proofing, you are ready to calculate and accumulate and list taxes and move on with your TMT sequence. That was a big lowdown on your rate input. It doesn't go that fast. Obviously, it takes a lot of time to enter all the rates and stuff, but yeah. Do you have any questions?
So not to make this super difficult, can you go back to where the rate entry was for making items, so like the county and then the township and city slide? From some of the teams meetings we had, years ago, that we had a discussion between a bunch of us counties on those calls that we do different levels of detail having to do with our debt. So when you have like a city that gives you their levy certification that lists 6 different bond issues for their debt, we don't all do them the same. In my county, even if they give me 6 items, I add them all together and that is one debt rate, because that city has a spreadsheet. They just take the dollars and they spread them once I give them the money in settlement. I think these. Yeah, because you were running out of. So you had to actually do cleanup because there was a lot of old bonds that probably weren't active anymore. So it's something to keep in mind on an individual county basis, that you can, working with your cities or those that have those levy items, to determine how much detail that you have to do entry for calculating taxes. And so just wanted to bring that up, that I definitely do not put in every bond issue for every city that comes on my list.
Yeah, it's a very like process.
So just a reminder to not remove any rates that you might have delinquent taxes tied to, because then it'll go into the wrong. So if you're gonna, one county had all of their rates full from 0 down to 99 and needed to remove some old ones, you want to make sure you're not removing any old ones that might still have delinquent tax tied to them.
And like with your GL funds too, you need to keep them around in case there's delinquent taxes. Your printer report. Tell you which one. Still have them?
The question is, can you print a report to tell you which ones still have them? You could print a report to see what delinquent taxes are out there, like what years have delinquent taxes. If you go into delinquents, you can see, what years have delinquent taxes. You would then have to figure out which of these are tied to those years. There's nothing that's going to say, well, you put this one in 2003 and you put that one in. An unpaid settlement. So Gwen's saying if you run an unpaid settlement, that might pull your rate types through the delinquents and show you what ones you have and what ones you don't. I will write this down and we'll make sure you get this some sort of written suggestion from this meeting.
Any other questions or comments?
Back on that, very careful, because I figured thing.
And I actually had to have Gwen at CPT reinstall everything, because we found out that, yes, there was several delinquent years out there that were tied to something back 10 years ago. And we thought the things we proved, yeah, well, it's good to clean it up, it's done. No. I just strongly suggest you thoroughly, I don't know how, but every aspect you can look at.
Check and double check, and per Gwen, unpaid settlement is a great place to start.
We have Susie up next.
So Liz started our TNTs, and then I'm going to finish, go through the tax calculating and the printing. So just a reminder, you want to make sure your assessor has paused. We talked about how difficult that is making their changes. You want to make sure they have accumulated their abstract. Again, when you're doing your rate maintenance, it will tell you when they last accumulated. You want to make sure that was like right before you started, and then list their abstract in order for your TNT notices to be correct. Then before you would do my step, you're inputting the tax capacities and the initial rates and the disparity rates of local taxes and proofing all that, which Liz walked you through. So then I'm picking up right after Liz. Once you feel good about all of that, you move into your tax calc. You would run option 5 in tax and 22 tax calc. You can run this as many times as you want to, and there can be people in your system. However, somebody might be holding like a parcel that it was not gonna calc tax on. So the last time you run your tax calc, right before you're doing your TNT information, right before you're doing your tax statement information, you wanna make sure everyone's out of the system. So you don't miss that like one parcel here or there that might not get calced. When you run your tax calc, it's gonna give you 2 edit listings. The first edit listing is ag credit parcels that have 0 tax. And when I ran this, you can see my first parcel has $51 of tax and $46 of credit. Well, how come there's no tax? I went and I pulled this up in A-tax. And if you go into like your inquiry in the bottom right-hand corner, there's that quick access. You can write A-tax in there. There's also the menu option. You don't have to know the menu option. You can type A-tax and it'll pull in your auditor's tax values and show you, yeah, I had school bond in addition to that ag credit that gave me 0 tax. This edit listing that shows up is not showing you everything. It's just listing the ag credit parcels that end up with 0 tax. Just a heads up for you. The other edit listing that pulls up is your cross-county parcels with unused ag credit. Shannon walked you through pulling up this information, making sure you're sharing it, how to get, how to generate listings for each county with their information. But you can cross-check that with this for your final tax calc and make sure the information you sent is still the information that's correct for your final tax calc. Then after you run option 5 to check those edit listings, you run option 6 to accumulate your tax totals, and then option 16 to list your tax totals. Now, when you run option 6, it's going to generate a tax comparison listing, which is down here. If all of your tax capacities match, you will get nothing on this listing. This listing is going to populate information for you. If you have a tax capacity that is not like one of the others, you can see in my example here, I fat fingered my rate maintenance tax capacity. I added a 0. That's going to cause problems. I'm going to want to go back and fix that. This will generate to your school file when you run option 6. Then you run option 16 to list your tax totals. Once you list your tax totals, we suggest you proof these back to your levies. Remember that they're not going to be exact because we're rounding for tax statements, but we suggest you print by anything you had a levy for. So all of your townships, all of your school districts, these next 4 are kind of by county. So you might have all of them, you might have none of them. They might look different in your county, but anything you had a levy for, it's a good idea to list tax totals for that type and proof them back to your levies. You can also check your tax totals to your tax rolls. They should be the same. They're almost always the same. Every once in a while, we run into an issue where they're not. So you can run option 19 in that same tax M22 that you'll live in this time. And run it by option 1, your township totals only, to proof it against your township tax totals. When you run option 19, you can run it as a PDF. So I have option 19 down here. This is what your option 19 will look like in PDF form. Your option 16, you can't render your PDF. This is what it would look like in your spool file. Your taxable market should match your taxable market, and your total tax capacity should mark your total tax capacity. It looks a little bit goofy how they're laid out. You're looking at your township totals, taxable market, and tax capacity. Those should match up. Once you feel good about all of that, your rates and your taxes, then we can talk about setting up TNT notices. So your TNT notices are actually in your tax act 24, option 10. And then when you take option 10, it'll pull up this whole new menu. 1 through 4 are your setup options. You can use those at any time. Options 5 through 8 are going to be like when you're ready to start printing your TNTs, when you're done with your tax calc and you're ready. We'll walk through 1 through 4 first. So 4 actually will print all of options 1 through 3. So it's a great place to start. Take option 4, print what you have in your system for options 1 through 3, go through it, mark, your dates are going to change, sometimes other things will change, but you can see in that printout what you have in your system. Then you'll take option one for your county info. This is just an example. This is an example of how your county might have it set up. Your county might offer slightly different information or do slightly different things. But here's what a county would use, kind of why we've added different lines, different places. If as we're going through this, your county does something different that you think might be helpful to other counties, holler and I'll come shove the mic in your face and you can share your information. But these, I've just filled in like general information for like how a county might fill this out. And then you'll take option 2, which talks about school districts. You'll enter your school district here and it will, you can go through, you have to enter different information for each school district. Again, this is just variety of information. For each school district, you have to decide whether they have a referendum. You need to put the referendum message in or not. You need to hit enter on these to save them. If you F3 exit out, it's not going to save the information that you changed. You need to hit enter to save them. But when you're in the school districts, you have the option to hit F6 to bypass and just scroll to the next school district, or shift F6, which is F18, to go back to the previous school district. So you can go through them that way, or you can put your cursor in the school district line and hit F2 to search for whatever school district you're looking for. The townships are similar. You have to enter them each separately. Here's the information. They have the F2, F6, F16. I would say the townships typically have the least amount of information. Sometimes it's like go to the meeting and find out, but there's at least some information about what's in there. Once you have all that in there, you probably want to run your option 4 again, print it, proof it, send it to someone else to proof, make sure it's the way you want it. Then you're going to either take option 5 or option 7. If you print locally, if you print in-house, you're going to use option 5. If you outsource, you're going to take option 7. So I'm going to first walk through option 5 for those of you who print locally, because we do have some counties that are doing these in-house. If you're printing them in-house, we have to help set them up for you typically. So you would want to contact our office and make sure you kind of make an appointment. So we have you like on our calendar, because otherwise we sometimes get like 4 counties sending us emails at 4 o'clock saying this really has to be done by tomorrow. And we can't do that turnaround. So contact our office, get on Sue's list for proofing those parcels and helping you out. When it's time, you would run option 8 to do your proof parcels. That's just a few parcels that will generate to your school file, and she helps make sure that your options are going to or your fields are going to the correct places on your form, that were set up for your printer. And a lot of that will come from, previous years, but you want to double check every year that that's working correctly. So you'd start by taking option 8, doing proof parcels. And then when that's all set up and ready, you're going to run your county's T&Ts. There's option 1 will run your whole county, but there's an option in there to exclude certain zip codes. So you can either take option 2 to print by certain zip codes, and then when you take option 1, exclude those zip codes if you have some really large zip codes in your county, or you can use option 3 and that'll give you ranges of zip codes. So if you don't want to print if you want to do print batches instead of printing all of your county at once, you can use those options to do that. Option 8 on that same menu will give you a summary of how many notices per zip code or per township you have. So to help you decide which zip codes you might want to print first, last, or together. Option 8 offers you job control. So while we're here, because we have quite a few new people who are kind of uncertain about job control, different job control menus look different ways, but there are certain settings that are good to check. First is submit to job queue. Job queue is when we would send jobs out to wait in line to be processed. That's a very old way of doing things. Our computers are much faster these days. We don't use job queue anymore. So sometimes it'll be, do you want to use job queue? Do you want to run locally? Do you want to evoke free screen? We run everything locally. We don't run job queue. The second one is your printer name. You need to know what your printer name. It's what printer you would want this sent to and have that entered there. And then the third one that we suggest you look at is holding the printout. That means instead of it automatically printing to your printer, it's going to go to your spool file, and then you decide whether you want to print it or not. If this says no, it's going to print directly to your printer. If it says yes, it'll go to your spool file, and then you can release it to your printer. Questions on the job control? Okay. Oh yeah, I already talked about option 8, can give you which notices are helpful. Options 4 and 5 here are really like helpful if you had a printer jam or something went wrong printing and you need to reprint something instead of going into your spool file and finding that page and figuring out what went wrong. You can certainly just come back here and regenerate for like one parcel or one taxpayer and reprint those notices. So that's printing locally. If you have questions on that and you're one of the counties that does that, contact us, reach out, we're happy to help. Option 7 is for outsourcing, which I think most of you do. When you take option 7, it's a lot more streamlined. It's going to ask you if you want to print the alternate taxpayer. Now, when you print locally, there will be this option as well. To clarify, if you choose yes, then if there's an alternate taxpayer, the TNT notice or the statement will be sent to that alternate taxpayer. If there's not an alternate taxpayer, it's going to print to your normal taxpayer. If you choose no on this option, then choose alternate taxpayer if it exists. If you say no, all of your TNT notices are going to the taxpayer on file, even if there's an alternate taxpayer in the file. If that's confusing, reach out. And then the second option here is proof parcels only. If you say yes, it will generate only your proof parcels. That's what we kind of used to do. If you say no, it will generate your whole county and your proof parcels will be marked. I think that's what most counties are doing. If your outsourcer charges you per upload, you typically would want to say no, generate the whole county, upload it, ask them to send you back the proof parcels. You'd only have to re-upload if there's some issue. The last question is the Presort Plus. You only say yes if you're a Presort Plus outsourcer, and your outsourcer should be telling you that. You're going to input your answers and hit enter. TNT out is going to be sent to your tax bill folder. That's what you would share with your outsourcer. Now, if you are a county that puts your TNT notices on the web, we do that using the outsourcer file. So even if you print them locally, if you want them to put on your website, you're going to have to run option 7, make that outsource file, and then let us know. If you're a county that outsources and you want them on the web, make sure you leave that TNT out in your tax bill folder. Don't rename it, don't move it. In order for our web to go pull it onto the web, we need a TNT out in your tax bill folder in order for it to grab. So you can move it, but copy it and rename it there. And then you would contact us, contact CPT, let us know what date you ran it, and then we'll move it to the web. Okay, another thing you can do in your TNT setup is you can take option 6 and build your truth and taxation inquiry file. That sends the TNT information into option 7 of your inquiry so that screen will now be your new year's information. When you go in there, it's going to say, this file exists because it's got last year's information. Do you want to rebuild it? You can say no, and it will say, are you trying instead to print an office copy? If you say yes, then it will generate a listing with details, with either totals or details and totals of the TNT information, and you can print it. If you leave this range blank, it'll print your entire county, or you can print part of your county. So you can print this listing through the build inquiry option. Or if you say, yes, I want to rebuild my inquiry, then it will ask you to choose, if you want to choose the alternate taxpayer name if it exists. You want to choose the same option you chose for your notices, because you want that inquiry screen to show who the notice was sent to. So if you said yes when you generated your notices, you would say yes here. And if you said no, you would say no here. All right, that's it for TNTs. Any questions, suggestions, thoughts before we move on to just a few other items? Okay. Just a couple heads up. I think you all know this, but this is in your files. It has been since you made your 24-25 files. The homestead exclusion and the ag homestead tier exclusion. It's this point here and this point here that are changing. That's all that's changing. So where we used to take 40% up to 76,000, it's now taking it up to 95 and then going back down. And where they used to get their preferred rate on the first 2.15 million, they're now getting that preferred rate on the first 3.5 million, and then it's going up. I think everyone knew this was coming, but that is in there, and that's what our system is doing now. Just a couple thoughts on, we have proof parcels that are coming out. We'll be sending out the sequence soon. For those of you that are new, these proof parcels are shared by the auditor and the assessor offices. They will stay, once you put them in there, they just stay there until you change it. They're used to proof notices of valuation for the assessors, your TNPs, and your tax statements. So most counties have like a variety of parcels in there so that you can go and check all that information. Like we talked about, they can be generated separately, but they're also marked in the outsourcer file for you to be able to proof. To change your proof parcels or to look at your proof parcels, you're going to, from your auditor's menu, take option 23. And then in your custom options menu is option 7, proof parcels, maintenance, and listing. If you take option 7 and one of your proof parcels was deleted in your files, you have to let us delete it in your proof parcels. It'll give you this pop-up to say, this parcel no longer exists. If you say yes, delete it, you'll go in and you can enter another parcel that's similar to it. If you say no, it's going to kick you out. You don't get to go in and look at anything unless you let us delete parcels that don't exist. So if you say yes and you go in, it will show you a listing of your proof parcels. If you want to input a new one, you just put the parcel information in and field exit, and it's going to load the rest. You then do F5 to update. You can also just go in here and take an F21 to print what proof parcels you have in there. If you're new and you want to go look and see what your proof parcels are, you can just open this option and print it. If you want to remove one, you can go in and you can delete it on your own. The other thing that's coming out soon is the name, address, PC file sequence. This sequence is optional, but it's used to decrease return mailing, saving counties time and money. You will generate your PC file and send it to your outsourcer. Your outsourcer typically checks name and addresses using systems they have access to, the CAS system, the NCOA database. And then any questionable addresses, they'll send back to you and you decide if you update them in your system or not. To get to this, you're going to take your custom options 23 from your auditor's menu and then another 23 to go to your extra options menu, and it's option 11. Once you run option 11, you type in option 11 and you hit enter, that's all you do. It creates a tax P name in your tax bill folder that you would send to your outsourcer for them to check. Any questions on either of those? Those are two really easy sequences that are coming out soon. Another thing that was touched on earlier to proof for tax season is to start checking and double checking any splits you may have had this year. If you go into your custom options and run option 19, you can look at what splits have happened. When you open option 19, it will tell you the previous date range that was run and who ran it, and then it will allow you to put in a date range. You can run it by all, where you would see all the splits that were done in your date range. Or you can say, I want to see only splits for properties that had special assessments, or that are in my ditch assessments menu, or that are in one of my other menus, so that you can make sure that you have updated their information in that menu so that it's going to be up to date for your tax statements. Now, this is not necessarily TNT prep, but it's for sure tax statement prep. When you do that, I had it run for my special assessments. So you can see up here, I took option special assessments. So I'm listing properties that have been changed to special assessments. If they're also in another one of my menus, it's going to list. Over here, it's going to tell you what assessment year the split was done in. And if it was an M special assessment or MM split, it will tell you. So where we were talking about earlier, the YNM, if it was an M, that's gonna list here to say like, this was a maintenance split, nothing actually changed. So that splits. Since no one's been quiet, I assume if there's any questions, they'll just speak up. This is your school file. We've talked to a few people of late who don't realize that they're not seeing as much as they can in their school file. So when you get back to your office, and we will be sending out this PowerPoint along with the recording sometime next week. So you can certainly come back and look at it. But if your school file looks like this, if it goes up to 8, you're not seeing everything you can see. If you want it to look like this, if your school file looks like this, if it goes up to 10 and then beyond to 3, you're seeing as much as you can see. So for people whose school file looks like this, if you want to see this, you would go to the top, to the Communications tab, and go down to Configure. In Configure, you want to look at your screen size. Now, if you have a square screen and you choose the 27 by 132, it's going to be a tiny thing that you're seeing. But I think most of us have wide screens. And so that's what this 27 by 132 is set up for, is those of us that have wide screens. Oops, I want to see as much as we can.
So you can double check what version of iSeries you're on, because in that same area under your actions, you can retrieve your school file from there, and it will give you all of your school as PDFs that you can open. So double check what you have at home. I'm gonna probably change my settings like this, but I use the other.
Then you get it to PDF.
Yes.
That's the newer.
So if you have a newer version of the iSeries, you will be able to see your school file, not using your DSpace-P, but as PDFs. So this might still be helpful, but it's not, you wouldn't use it as much. But if you have an older version of your iSeries, that's not available. And so then you would want to see as much of your school file as you can. I know we have the newer version, and I will look at mine as PDFs. There are still times where I open my school file because I want to search for something, or I want to, it's just a little bit easier if you know how to navigate your school file. I want to go in there and I want to look and see. So I still do like to be able to see as much as I can.
Half my office has the old, half my office has.
How is that updated? Half of an office has the old, half is the new.
I see this.
That's your local IT that updates those things. So we are not sending you that update. That's not, like, we run on the iSeries, but which iSeries is installed on your computer is up to your local IT.
I would guess, I wonder if Sean's been doing that, or.
Well, we had 2 new staff people the last month. I know theirs is different than what I have.
The newer one.
They have the
So
same.
new staff has the new one and old staff has the old one. Kind of like I'm running a newer version of Windows than everyone else because my computer is newer.
We could talk to Sean or Jackson.
Yeah, you could talk to whoever from, Morris Electronics comes to your county and see if you could all get the new version. It is really slick to be able to pull off PDFs as your school file.
That's a little different, but not a lot different.
It's not the same thing as your school file, but it's, very close and often convenient. Okay, it's 1:30. I have an optional, going through options for reversing taxes and abating, what options there are, because there are people who've been around for a long time who don't know all the options. We want to run through this? Yes, we want to run through this. Okay. So when you're going to reverse taxes, there are 2 ways you can do that. And then we're going to abate. So what are my notes say here? Completed. Okay, so we're going to look at abatement additions, and then we're going to look at regular postings versus refund postings. Different menus offer different options. If you have questions, I'm going to show you kind of what the different options are, but I cannot show you the best way to do everything because every situation is different. So when you're looking at a situation, feel free to call us and explain to us, this is what I have to do. What's the most efficient way to do this? Because I will tell you, even if you call us, we're probably gonna call the person from next door over and have like a brainstorming session so that we keep your files as clean as we can. So it's like nothing bad to call and say, hey, what's the best way to do this? Sometimes you just need multiple brains on a problem. So first, refund posting versus minus posting. So refund postings are done in the auditor's menu, tax in 23, option 8. The benefit is they have their own separate settlement, which gives a really nice paper trail, and they offer more detailed options. The drawback is they have their own separate settlement. And so it can cause you a little bit more work when you're settling to financial. So that's both a benefit and a drawback, depending on, your process and what's important in your county and, how many refunds you're gonna do. It maybe it's not worth doing for one refund, but if you've got 10 or 15 or 20 of them that you want to track, maybe it is worth doing. Minus posting is done in the regular posting menu, so that's the treasurer's side. It's in tax in 33, you're gonna take your option 1 and choose a regular posting. Benefits, it's included in the receipt settlement, so no extra work for you, and it works just like a regular posting. So it's gonna be something that you are familiar with, easy button. Drawbacks, it's included in your regular receipt settlement. So there's no like extra paper trail. It can be a little bit harder to find. Drawbacks are everything looks the way you think it's gonna look. And we see a lot of people calling us saying, I forgot to hit the minus because I was in like normal processing mode. So to do this, open up my iSeries here. Numbers left. Okay. So I'm going to start with a reverse posting. Oh no, yeah. I'm going to start with a regular posting because that's what we would normally see. And so I'm going to go into postings and choose a regular posting. Now we suggest that you take either today's date, or if this is kind of a special thing where there's not actually money changing hands, do a weekend nearby. Because then especially if you're doing this as a regular posting where you don't have a paper trail, it's easier to find. So pick a day when you would never be posting things and do especially if you're doing like a refund and abatement or something, do it on a weekend date that's going to be easier to find. So I'm going to pick this weekend. Oh. And then I'm going to input my personal. So when you go in here, it looks just like a normal. It's going to pull up whatever you have left to pay. You're going to put in what you want to minus post. I'm going to do $100, and then I'm going to minus exit to make it a minus post. Now you can only reverse what's been paid so far. So on this parcel, we've paid $24.76 of penalty. If I try to put in $25 of penalty, I'm going to get a message down here that says I cannot reverse more penalty than I posted. And it's going to make me change that before I do it. The thing that you have control over in here is how much goes to what special assessment. So it will load like what would have loaded automatically if you were inputting taxes. But if you want to control it, you can put a 0 in for manual here. And then you can see what assessments there are. And in this case, I'm going to say, I'm posting $100, 10, not 01, to just that one special. And then I would have to clear out the other ones. That's not $100, that's $10. All right, so if I do that, my total here is going to have to match the total I had on my front page. I'm going to hit F5 to update. I hope this is F5 to update. Yep. And there we go. The other thing you can do is to edit down here where you have a person making payment. If it's not this person who you're giving money back to, you would put in here you could leave the person, or you could put like, the board made me do it, right? So that you know, like, I'm reversing this due to the board decision, or whatever it was, bad check, whatever it was, you can put that in there. And then on this menu, when you hit, enter, it posts. We suggest, especially if you're doing like refund, abatement, whatever, you go in between, into your inquiry and, check, just to make sure. Inquiry. That it did it the way you wanted to, so you don't get to the end and go, oh, no. I want to make sure I took $100 off of that special, and it did. That's really good to check, kind of at each step of the process. So the other way that we can do these is through a refund post, which is done in the auditor's menu. It's going to be in option 3 with the abatements. Option 8 is a refund posting. Again, you're going to put in your parcel number and your posting date. Same suggestion, choose a close weekend date and pull it up. Now in this menu, you have a little bit more control. You can split between tax and market referendum. And then it will show you, it's like a little bit easier to see what's totally been received, that there's penalty that's in there. I'm going to show you how you can edit that special assessments as well. So at the top, you're going to put your total refund amount in. We're going to say, this time I'm going to get rid of the last of the $26.55. It will automatically split it for you if you don't want it to be where it's supposed to be. You just field exit and then put it in where you want it. Now, the way that you can designate your special assessments here, instead of a 0, we're doing an F8 to see the special assessment detail. And it'll, again, pull up that same special assessment screen. It's split automatically between the assessments. If you want it to be in a particular one, you input what you want and hit F5 to update. Any questions on this? So the downside is this is going to, downside and upside is this is going to its own settlement. But, you know, specifically if you need to deal with like a market referendum, you can't designate that on the regular posting screen, and you can here. It's maybe just a little bit easier to see, like, this is not like normal. Make sure you minus exit. So I'm going to F5 to update. Oh. Okay. And then I'm going to go check in my inquiry and make sure that it went. And there we have it. It says tax refund posting. And then the information. So often we're refunding with an abatement. You owe somebody money, but it's all paid. So the refunds are going hand in hand with abatements. What did I want to say about abatements? Abatements are done in the auditor's menu. Typically, that's tax M23. There are a variety of minus posting and refund options. You know, if you need to do transmission lines, mineral interest, wind tower, they have their own bots to do this, and you can call us and ask us where those are, and we can help you find them. You know, usually we're doing abatements in our tax M23, or you're doing a delinquent abatement, which is in your delinquent section of the system. For abatements, remember, minus is going to be an abatement. You can only abate taxes that have not been paid. If they were paid, you have to do a refund or minus posting first. In the abatement additions menu, a plus is an addition. That doesn't require unpaid taxes. But best practices for an abatement would be to make, or an addition would be to generate a new statement so that this taxpayer is 100% clear that they now owe you more money. That's the way you make them owe you more money, is through that addition. I'm going to highlight a few things in the abatement additions that I outlined here. Field exit pluses for additions, minuses for abatements. You can F8 in a lot of places to enter details. I'll show you where. For special assessments, you can toggle and search. We'll go into that and I'll show you. And then there's a split override option. When you enter an addition or an abatement, it automatically splits between total taxes left due. So if they paid no taxes, half is gonna go to the first half, half is gonna go to the second half. If you want it to go all to the first half or all to the second half, there's a way to tell the program that's what you want it to do, and I'll show you that. Let's get back out of here. In my I series, I'm going to take option 6 here to post an abatement or an addition. I'm going to do my weekend date again, make it easy to find, and then go in here. So I am going to, okay, so you can see we have an F8 here for detailed entry. You can do that on a number of lines in here. On your tax line, if you hit F8, I'm a second. $1 right there. If I hit F8, it'll show me all the options for tax. If you need to add or abate a certain spot, you can come in here and you can send it to that certain spot. If you want to do market referendum, you can pull it open in case there's more than one market referendum. You can see all the market referendums that are available for this property. If you try to do an F8 on a line that it doesn't work, it just does nothing, okay? So there's nothing wrong with just trying the F8, but there are a few lines here where it's not gonna work. Oh yeah, great. It's saying this is an TIF district. Which one do you want to send it to? The specials are what we're gonna do. I'm gonna take the 126.55 that I made it, I'm gonna add it. When you put a special in here, it automatically pulls up your detail menu for the special assessment for an abatement addition. And it's gonna automatically split it between specials that have something due. But I can field exit to clear those. And I can say, no, I actually wanted to move this to a different special. So I can go over here and hit F2. And I can pick what special I want to send it to. Or if you knew the number, you could just put the number in and it would enter that number. And then you put in, you know, whether you wanted principal, interest, admin. There's an F7 toggle, which I maybe should have done first, but it toggles between seeing these lines and not seeing these lines. So like when we came in, we were shown this. If you actually wanted to not pay interest, you could hit F7 toggle, got rid of the interest, put it on the principal, or whatever you wanted to do. So that F7 toggle will go back and forth in between. And then we'll F5 to update. So the override split is up here where I said if you want to, you can put it all in the first half or on the second half taxes. You would put in a 1 or a 2. If you don't remember, there's an F2 prompt for that. It'll tell you, do you want it all in the first half, all in the second half? And you can designate how you want that to go. I wonder. So, you know, in my test files, I do whatever I want. And then I'm like, I wonder, since they already paid the first half, if I can do that. Let's try it. So once I have this all in here, I'm going to F5 to update. Any questions before I move on? Okay. And then we can go out and we can look at our inquiry and make sure it went where we wanted it to. And so it went in here as an addition to that special assessment. There's a quick overview. You could go back and reference all the different options. So when it gets complicated is when you need to move money. It was put in this fund and it actually needed to go in that fund. And what's the best sequence to move it the most efficiently from one place to the other? Because different menu options allow for different funds and designations. Sometimes there's a faster and slower, slicker and messier way of doing things. If we don't have any questions, I think that's all we have for today. We do have.
question goes back to Gwen from earlier, when you were talking about you're gonna create these bogus, unique taxing areas for our state assessed transmission lines. Are those unique taxing areas going to show up on our rate listing? Like the detailed rate listing where it lists each unique taxing area and then their county, city, township, school rates all compiled together? It seems like anytime we run that report, if there's any value or net tax capacity assigned to a unique taxing area, they show up there, but there's no rates for them.
So I think in that regard, we have to keep them out of there, like, right, specifically. These they are transmission line parcels. I don't think that we would run like tax capacity, anything like that, real estate, that they interfere. But when we talk about like the true detailed taxing districts that are there, because in order in our system to make it even work, we're gonna have to create one. We're gonna have to put in a township 99, and we're gonna have to put in a school district 999, or we just won't get anywhere. So, yeah, we'll have to make sure they're excluded. And I don't think that they'd really cause a problem per se if they came in there, but you don't want them on your listings for sure. Right.
Any other questions?
And before we go, we want to talk about the tax web. The updated tax web. We all have the other one. So we currently have 4 counties that are on an updated tax web. Is there anyone we can get them? So 4 counties will get named here are Douglas, Yellow Medicine, Hope, and Meeker that are currently on it. We have Renville, Canby ready to go, and Mille Lacs testing.
What's that?
Oh, at the bottom of the house.
Can you see that?
Oh, I got it. Yeah. Doing a good job of hiding it. Picking on you guys. Okay.
All right, so this is how we start. I mean, there was a disclaimer on the current one too. Same, do your searches. Then we come in, we pick a parcel, and this is what's called our dashboard. So,
The one thing that we did different with this is, it used to be a link for values and then another link for tax, and we try to bring those together into one. So that they don't have to go to each record individually, they can see everything from here.
but then we have the tabs up top that you can't get into each individual tile here, that's on the dashboard. So our question today is that we have, like we said, 3 counties currently testing, and Stevens has agreed to test next, but we need to have either volunteers or we'll pick you. So feel free to contact our office if you're interested. Just let us know and we'll start, because we would really like to get everyone on this in a couple months' time. And we're gonna have to keep on task if we're going to be doing that. Because what we require isn't a lot, And it's getting less and less as we get counties on because they're finding less things that are not, okay, I'll use the word right, they aren't right. So what we need from you is just really coming up we'll send you the link. It will be, so on your county page, it will stay the old way until you would review this in office and say, yes, it looks good. And then we contact your IT and they put it on their, on your county webpage. And you go to this. And this is the first leg of the tax rewrite, so good. The other pieces of the tax rewrite, so, we are really getting close to getting a report generator out to county testers. And considering that maybe 6 months ago, we thought it was like ready, it's been worked over and worked over. And what will happen is we are going to convert what you currently have in your tax report generator, all offices, of course. And then you can, so if you had favorites and whatever, you can still have those. No? At that point, I mean, you'll need training and our tax support will help you with that. And then you will be able to access this from the green screen. So it isn't like you have to go somewhere else and do it and all that. It'll be accessible from, we're currently thinking about just a command on the command line. Or Jen or whatever, something like that. Okay, Camel Land Calc, we will be looking for county testers in the next month or two at the assessors meeting. We kind of got a little pushback that if we're not up and running by January 1st, we don't want to go till after valuation notices, so open. I mean, I understand. This is their busy time and they're not gonna wanna be messing around with, oh, this doesn't work or that or whatever. The assessor's office, which is being worked on in tandem with the Camel Land Calc. Like I said, if we don't get that there by the first of the year, they're not gonna do that either. So the disappointing part is not so much that we won't get them there, but that they won't do their valuation notices on the new system. So then we'll have to wait a whole year for that sequence to come around. But other than that, I mean, yeah. And the auditor treasurers will be coming then after that. And the nice thing about we have worked on auditor treasurer options. I mean, we went through all tax M21. That's all being done with the assessors. And so is tax inquiry. And so are things like that. So it's not like, oh, well, we're starting at ground zero. Well, no, you're not starting at ground zero. You're up a few levels above that. So, okay, any questions on that before we let you go?
Any questions, anything else? I'd like to thank you for coming and people that are attending via Zoom too. And like I said, we have recorded it so we can put it out there. So if you want to review or see it, or have somebody in the office that you'd like to have see it, that'll be out there. Otherwise, thank you for your time.
What's better?
You did. I know.
It's all yours. Right, you got some. I can.